What's up, beautiful people? Today we're going to take a look at the Louisiana Purchase, by far Thomas Jefferson's biggest accomplishment as president. And this story begins with the election of 1800, an election in which the Federalists lost control of both the executive and legislative branches. Taking over the executive branch would be the first Democratic Republican to take office, Thomas Jefferson. And remember, Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republican Party had a different vision than the Federalists. He favored a weak central government, favored agriculture, and was an advocate of a strict interpretation of the Constitution. Central to this vision was, "We are farmers." Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. Jefferson envisioned the U.S. being an agrarian republic. Jefferson believed the future of the United States lie in the hands in a nation of farmers, free and independent farmers who own their own land. Now, central to achieving this goal would be, of course, getting enough land. Even before the election of Jefferson, the nation was already expanding westward. The population was growing, and new states such as Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio had entered the Union. Now, after the American Revolution, the borders of the U.S. stretched from the original 13 colonies to the Mississippi River. Spain controlled most of the territory west of the Mississippi River, including what will become known as the Louisiana Territory. You may recall things were not exactly all rainbows and unicorns with our Spanish amigos, because in the 1790s, Spain cut off American farmers' right to use the Mississippi River and deposit their crops in New Orleans, and this was no bueno for American farmers. Fortunately for the young nation, Pinckney's Treaty smoothed things over when Spain agreed to give the U.S. free use of the Mississippi River for 5 years, and the boundary was set at the 31st parallel between Spanish Florida and the United States, which brings us to 1801. France regained control of this region from Spain. And yes, stranger on the internet, I said regain control because remember, after the French lost the French and Indian War, France was kicked out of North America with the Treaty of Paris, therefore having to give up this territory that they previously had control. Now, Jefferson was very interested in the southern part of this French territory, namely New Orleans. New Orleans was a port city, and access to this port was very important for trade along the Mississippi River. At this point, railroads do not exist. Roads in the region were pretty much non-existent as well, and Amazon Prime had yet to service this region. If you have access to the port of New Orleans, you would not need to travel across difficult terrain that included mountains, forests, valleys, and all sorts of other obstacles to swift travel in the 1800s. You need that Mississippi River. Now, the return of France to North America made some in the U.S. a bit uneasy. For years, American settlers had been moving west into the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys, and these farmers needed access to the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans for their economic livelihood. Remember, Spain had previously closed off American access to the port of New Orleans, and Napoleon was committed to building up the French Empire, so there were worries that Europe was going to punk us some more. Fortunately, Napoleon, as luck would have it, was ready to abandon his North American empire because he had other issues to worry about. One issue, as you could see on the map, Napoleon needed money to fight his battles in Europe. Another reason he needed money was due to the events across the Atlantic in the French colony of Haiti. A slave revolt broke out, and France was unable to put down this rebellion, and as a result, Napoleon is forced to abandon his dream of a French North America. So faced with the revolt in the French colony of Haiti, along with needing money to fight his battles in Europe, Napoleon decided it was time to cash out. So, very important point. Jefferson hoped to acquire this territory not only to help fulfill his goal of a nation of independent farmers, but also because acquiring New Orleans would be key to controlling commerce along the Mississippi River. Negotiations for this territory begin when in 1802 Jefferson sent James Monroe and Robert Livingston to Paris to negotiate for the purchase of New Orleans and some of the surrounding territory. Shortly into the negotiations, the delegation offered France $10 million for the area you see on the map, but much to their surprise, Napoleon offered to sell all of the Louisiana territory. And in April of 1803, the deal was made. The U.S. bought over 800,000 square miles from France for the low price of $15 million. And let's take a moment to see what a big deal this was. Prior to the Louisiana Purchase, there were 17 states in the Union. And in purchasing the Louisiana Territory, the U.S. will nearly double in size, and eventually this territory will be divided into 15 additional states. While nobody in the U.S. knew exactly what we just purchased, yes, Lewis and Clark would go exploring and document a bunch of stuff about the geography, the native people, the animals and plants in the area, but Over time, it will be discovered that this land would include areas rich in gold, silver, fertile land for farming, and various other natural resources. Now, doubling the size of the United States will be an extraordinary accomplishment for Thomas Jefferson and the young nation, but like all things in history, the purchase of the Louisiana Territory will not be that simple. The real estate deal will lead to some constitutional questions, because nowhere in the Constitution does it state that the president can purchase new land. Remember, your boy Thomas Jefferson is a believer in a strict interpretation of the Constitution. At this point in our history, the federal government using its power to acquire such a vast tract of land was unprecedented and would be in sharp contrast to Jefferson's Republican beliefs of a limited federal government. In spite of his beliefs, Jefferson argued that the power to make treaties implied the president has the power to make the Louisiana Purchase deal. That's right, people. Jefferson, a strict interpretation of the Constitution guy, used a broad interpretation of the Constitution to justify making the deal. The deal also raised some opposition. Many Federalists who relied on political support from the New England area worried what this deal meant to their political future. As the nation expanded, individuals such as John Adams feared people living in this new territory would favor the Democratic Republican Party. And so Federalist opposition to the Louisiana Purchase emerged. While not a big issue at the time of the purchase, the acquisition of all this new territory would eventually also open up a question of the expansion of slavery in the new territory. We will see a huge sectional problem develop when in 1819, the first area of the Louisiana Territory will seek to become a state, Missouri, which will threaten the balance of power between the free and slave states. So adding all this new land will open up the issue of slavery in the territories down the road. In spite of these questions, the Louisiana Purchase is considered an exceptional accomplishment of Jefferson's administration. The young nation successfully negotiated with the European power to peacefully double the size of the United States, putting the U.S. on the path to becoming a major continental power. We no longer had to worry about some European power shutting down access to the Mississippi River, and we will soon find out that that territory, acquired for $15 million, had loads of natural resources. No war was needed. No blood spilled.
Were you trying to get crazy with this, eh?
Except, of course, for the blood of native people who were living on this land and who had no say in this deal between France and the United States. And we will see later on down the line numerous wars taking place between American settlers, the U.S. government, and, of course, the indigenous people who were here first. That's going to do it for this video. If you would like to check out other history and government videos, we have a whole bunch on the YouTube channel, as well as on the website, apushexplained.com. If the video helped you out, click like, tell some friends about the channel, and most importantly, have a beautiful day. Peace.